Day 59. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. The media is currently broadcasting helicopters searching the vast desert landscape. But today, the FBI shifted their entire focus to a much more terrifying location. They are knocking on doors, asking neighbors about the dark, empty house sitting right next to her bedroom window. This changes the entire scope of the investigation. We are no longer just looking for a missing 84-year-old woman. We are looking at a highly coordinated abduction, the kind of operation that requires immense patience, the kind that requires a predator to sit in the darkness and wait. Welcome back to True Crime with Liam. If you want to understand what the real danger in a quiet suburb looks like, hit subscribe. The central question of this ongoing case is no longer just where Nancy is right now. The single question nobody is asking is how long was someone living in that vacant house watching her every move before her security system was dismantled? The thought is paralyzing. You lock your doors at night feeling entirely secure. You assume the threat comes from a stranger walking down the street. You never assume the threat is sharing your property line. The empty house next door provides the absolute perfect vantage point. It offers a completely unobstructed view of the driveway. It gives a clear line of sight to the garage door. The person inside would know exactly when the lights go out in the master bedroom. Investigators are now exploring the terrifying possibility that the person who took Nancy did not just arrive randomly on the night of January 31st. They might have been there for weeks. They might have memorized her daily routines. They might have known exactly when her family members would arrive and depart. This is not a crime of opportunity. This is a targeted and calculated strike against a highly vulnerable target. The level of sophistication required to pull this off is genuinely chilling. The suburb offers a dangerous illusion of safety. The manicured lawns and silent streets make residents feel untouchable. But that silence is exactly what a stalker uses as cover. They blend into the emptiness of an unsold property. They become a ghost in a neighborhood where everyone minds their own business. The FBI involvement signals a massive escalation. Local police are clearly overwhelmed by the complexity of the crime scene. The federal agents are looking for the point of origin. They are looking for the staging area. They want to know who held the keys to that empty property. They want to know who had access to the side yard. The proximity of that vacant home to Nancy's bedroom window is the most disturbing detail of this entire ordeal. It means the perpetrator did not have to cross a busy street to reach her. They only had to cross a patch of grass. We must examine the timeline of that night to understand how this proximity was weaponized. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She relies heavily on walking aids and has severely restricted mobility. She is widely known as the mother of NBC television anchor Savannah Guthrie. On the night of January 31st, her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, drove her back to her residence. The garage door closed securely at 9:50 p.m. That moment was the last confirmed public sighting of Nancy. The following day, she failed to appear for her regular Sunday church service. Her deeply concerned family called 911 at exactly 12:03 p.m. When police finally entered the home, they found a scene that completely defied logic. Nancy was nowhere to be found, but her absolute essential lifelines remained exactly where she left them. Her cell phone was left behind on a kitchen counter. Her Apple Watch was still inside the house. Her purse and her daily life-saving medications were completely untouched. She seemingly vanished into the cold night while wearing her sleepwear. She left without even putting on her shoes. The only physical trace of violence was a chilling smear of blood found on the front porch. Official DNA testing quickly confirmed the blood belongs to Nancy. This specific detail forms the foundation of the terrifying mystery. A woman with severely limited mobility simply evaporates into the night. She leaves all her survival necessities behind. She leaves a trace of her own blood just steps from her front door. To understand how a restricted senior citizen could be taken so quickly, we have to look past the physical evidence on the porch. We have to look at the silent digital witnesses. We need to examine the technology that captured the exact moments the predator initiated the strike. We must break down the exact timeline between the moment Tommaso closed the garage door at 9:50 in the evening and the moment the digital eyes went blind. The 4 hours in between are a massive, terrifying void. Let us look closely at 1:47 in the morning. This is the exact minute the Nest doorbell camera was intentionally disabled. According to federal investigators, the alleged intruder did not smash the lens. Smashing creates noise. Smashing wakes up the neighborhood. Instead, the camera was systematically disconnected by a masked individual. This person knew exactly where the lens could not see them. They approached perfectly from the camera blind spot. They reached up and neutralized the only security measure standing between them and Nancy. This level of precision is not accidental. It requires immense practice. It requires intimate knowledge of the exact model of the camera mounted by the door. During those 4 silent hours, where was this individual waiting? If they walked down the main street, a passing car or a neighbor walking a dog might have spotted them, but if they simply stepped out the back door of the empty house next door, they would be completely hidden from the streetlights. They crossed the invisible property line in total darkness. They bypassed the front yard entirely. They moved through the shadows along the side fence. The vacant house provided the ultimate cover for those 4 agonizing hours. They waited for the neighborhood to fall completely asleep. They waited for the house to go completely dark. The silence of the night was their primary weapon. They understood the layout of the property better than the residents did. How did an intruder know the exact layout of the security system? How did they know the precise moment Nancy was finally alone and vulnerable inside? The answers to those questions lead us to the most disturbing revelation of this entire investigation. The timeline does not end at 1:47 in the morning. There is a second digital footprint that investigators recently uncovered. It is a timestamp that turns this case into an absolute nightmare. At exactly 2:28 in the morning, the application for Nancy's pacemaker suddenly severed its connection with her cell phone. A pacemaker app relies on a steady local connection. It requires the phone to be relatively close by to transmit vital health data. For that signal to drop completely, one of 2 things must have occurred. Either the cell phone sitting on the kitchen counter was forcefully destroyed, or the person wearing the pacemaker was rapidly physically removed from the local wireless range. The phone was found perfectly intact. This means the abduction was actively happening at 2:28. The silent strike took place in that terrifying 41-minute window between the camera dying and the heart monitor disconnecting. If the detail about the pacemaker makes you realize how chillingly sophisticated this abduction is, leave a like to help the algorithm spread this urgent information. This was a highly technical operation executed with terrifying precision, but it gets substantially worse. According to reports from NBC News, data retrieved from Google suggests the camera might have captured the masked individual stalking the property much earlier. There is alleged footage dating back to January 11th. That is 20 days before the kidnapping. For nearly 3 full weeks, this predator was allegedly studying the house. They watched the family come and go. They noted the specific vulnerabilities of the perimeter. They memorized the blind spots of the digital surveillance. The empty house next door gave them a front row seat to a woman living her life completely unaware of the danger outside. They sat in the dark, empty rooms next door and took notes. They monitored the lights turning on and off in her bedroom. They learned the exact range of her home network. He calculated everything perfectly for 20 days, except for one fatal mistake on the front porch. The physical evidence left on the concrete should have been enough to catch a killer, but we must look at what the investigators completely missed right from the start. A perpetrator leaving a trace of violence on a porch usually leaves footprints in the dirt. They leave clothing fibers on the door frame. They leave a trail that trained dogs can easily follow into the night. But the local police might have destroyed the very path that leads directly to Nancy. Former Sheriff Dr. Richard Carmona recently made a deeply disturbing public allegation, according to News Nation. He claims the active crime scene was horribly compromised during the most critical hours of the investigation. While the family was desperately searching for their mother, law enforcement allegedly allowed a routine pizza delivery straight into the taped-off area. The delivery person reportedly walked right through the active perimeter. This alleged failure is absolutely catastrophic for forensic teams trying to piece together a violent struggle. A crime scene is a delicate puzzle of microscopic clues. A single misplaced boot print from a responding officer can erase the exact shoe size of the kidnapper. A pizza box carried across the lawn can drop foreign DNA right over the path the attacker took. If the kidnapper was clumsy enough to leave blood on the concrete, why did the police find absolutely nothing else? The horrifying answer might be that the authorities accidentally wiped the area clean. They potentially trampled over the exact dirt path leading straight to the empty house next door. They might have paved over the invisible digital footprint left in the grass. This alleged negligence shifts the entire narrative of the case. We are no longer just looking at a terrifying predator hunting in the shadows. We are looking at a catastrophic breakdown of the local justice system. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos is currently facing a massive no confidence vote from his own deputies, according to reports from CBS. The community is watching their top law enforcement agency collapse inward while an 84-year-old woman remains missing. The failure to secure the perimeter allowed the trail to go instantly cold. The failure to lock down the area means any microscopic evidence pointing toward the neighbor's yard is gone forever. This alleged contamination forces us to rely entirely on the conflicting behavior of the suspect. The destroyed crime scene leaves us staring at a massive psychological contradiction. Who exactly is the person that took Nancy Guthrie into the dark? If we look closely at the evidence, we see two completely different criminal profiles operating inside the exact same body. Profile A is a digital ghost. This version of the attacker is a highly calculated professional. They monitored the daily routines of an elderly woman for nearly 3 weeks without triggering a single alarm. They knew the precise blind spots of a sophisticated home security network. They executed a completely silent digital blackout at 1:47 in the morning. They managed to sever a medical device connection without waking up a single neighbor. This requires extreme patience and a deep understanding of modern surveillance technology. This ghost moves silently and leaves zero digital trace behind. But then we look at Profile B. This version of the attacker is a reckless and violent amateur. This person grabbed a vulnerable woman in her sleepwear and forced her outside. They lost control of the situation on the front steps. They allowed a violent struggle to occur in an open space where any passing car could have seen them. They left a bright red biological beacon right on the front porch for anyone to find. A true professional operator cleans up their mess. A calculated predator does not leave the victim's blood smeared across the point of entry. A patient stalker does not turn a silent nighttime abduction into a messy physical altercation. These two profiles completely contradict each other. A technical genius who can dismantle a security grid should not make a chaotic mistake on the front steps. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this is the work of a highly trained operative who made one desperate physical mistake, or a reckless amateur who just got incredibly lucky with the technology? The local police have no clear answers because the physical scene is compromised. The community is left guessing because the evidence is heavily fractured. The two conflicting profiles seem absolutely impossible to merge into one person, but they do fit together perfectly under one specific condition. This massive contradiction can only be explained by one single horrifying theory. It is a chilling theory that the federal agents finally realized at the end of March. Former SWAT commander Bob Krieger shared a terrifying insight with News Nation. That vacant property is not just an empty building. It is a staging area. This tactical concept completely solves the massive psychological contradiction of the crime scene. A professional operator does not panic and leave a messy trail unless they are rushing toward a secure bunker. The attacker left a biological trace on the porch because they simply did not have the time to clean it up. They did not have to drag a struggling 84-year-old woman into a waiting vehicle on the street. They did not have to risk a neighbor seeing headlights pulling away in the middle of the night. They only had to pull her across the grass. They moved her into the absolute darkness of the empty house next door. This alleged movement changes the entire timeline of the morning she was reported missing. When the family frantically called authorities at 12:03 in the afternoon, the attacker was likely still there. They were allegedly sitting quietly behind the drawn blinds of the vacant property. They watched the first patrol cars arrive with their sirens screaming. They watched the yellow police tape secure the perimeter around the blood drops. They potentially watched the officers trample the very evidence that could have led straight to their side door. The staging area gave the perpetrator total control over the physical environment. They could wait for the massive police presence to naturally thin out over the next few days. They could wait for the perfect moment under the cover of darkness to move the victim to a secondary location. If you find this staging area theory as terrifying as the federal investigators do, please share this video to warn your own community. People desperately need to understand the extreme danger of unmonitored, vacant properties in their own neighborhoods. The tactical brilliance of this alleged plan is absolutely horrifying. The local police were aggressively searching the surrounding desert while the answer might have been sitting 50 feet away. The helicopters were scanning the far horizon while the alleged kidnapper was looking right back at them through a dusty window pane. This brings the investigation crashing back into a very grim reality. We are now at day 59. The federal agents are actively knocking on doors in that specific neighborhood. They are currently interrogating every single person who lives on that street. They want to know if anyone saw a strange vehicle parked in the driveway of the unsold house. They want to know if anyone noticed a faint flicker of light inside the abandoned living room during the month of January. The authorities have made absolutely zero arrests. The current status of this case is a massive void of actionable information. We are left staring at two monumental questions that demand immediate answers. What exactly did the federal agents learn from the neighbors during these recent aggressive interviews? And if the staging area theory is entirely accurate, how many days did the local police wait before they finally searched that empty house? Did they secure the vacant property on day one, or did they let the trail go completely cold? A highly vulnerable 84-year-old woman vanished from her own home without leaving a usable digital footprint. The expensive security grid failed entirely. The initial police response allegedly compromised the physical space, and the person responsible might have comfortably watched the entire frantic investigation unfold from the shadows of the house right next door. Do not believe the dangerous illusion of a gated community or a quiet street. There is one critical lesson this case teaches us about home security and the concept of blind spots. Most modern doorbell cameras only offer a narrow view of your front porch and the sidewalk directly ahead. They are completely useless if the threat arrives from the side of your property or stays in the shadows of a neighboring lot. You must look at the vacant spaces around your home as potential staging areas for a predator. A house with a for sale sign or a dark yard with no movement is a gift to someone who wants to watch you without being seen. You should consider motion-activated lighting that covers the entire perimeter of your yard and not just the entry points. We also learned that even the most expensive digital grid is only as strong as its power source and connection. What this case teaches us about human behavior is that a stalker is often a person of extreme patience who will wait 20 days just to find one 60-second window of opportunity. The single question about the empty house next door remains the most haunting part of this mystery. We began this investigation by asking how an 84-year-old woman could simply evaporate into the cold night air. The answer is likely hidden in the dusty rooms and the silent hallways of the property, sitting just a few feet away from her bed. This case is far from over, and we are committed to providing every new development as it happens. We will continue to track the federal investigation and the internal collapse of the local sheriff department until Nancy is found. Please subscribe and turn on your notifications so you do not miss the next urgent update on this timeline. As we wait for justice to find its way to Nancy Guthrie, you should take a long look at the dark house next to yours tonight. You have to ask yourself if someone is currently looking back at you from the shadows,